Hi my friends, and welcome to Practice English with Paul. This morning I woke up and I found a really interesting comment on my YouTube channel by, forgive me if I get the name, was it Silva from Brazil? And it's a really interesting question, and I said I'll make a quick video on this subject matter. And the question was fluency, can I become fluent without living in an English-speaking country? And I've been asked this question many times, so I want to kind of just give my opinion on this subject. Okay, the question is, what is fluency? Now, everybody I have spoken to basically has their own understanding, their own interpretation of what fluency means. Now, even when I was at university, my linguistics professor said, well, the ability to communicate is fluency. And I found that very strange, because if I said, hello, how are you? I'm fine, how are you? Well, that's effective communication. Is that fluency? I don't know. But for me personally, I can say that my definition of fluency, it's basically native level. That is fluency. Able to communicate in many different areas, to understand, to manipulate the language, maybe even make the same mistakes as natives make. I don't know why you want to do that, but still, that for me is how I see it. I believe that when you're fluent, you are mistaken for a native speaker. Now, I can tell you that based on my interpretation of fluency, I've only come across 5 people in my life, out of teaching millions, that I thought were English, because they had the accent, they used grammar perfectly, they used it naturally, vocab as well. I thought they were English until they told me they were not. And now, surprisingly, coming to this point later, I didn't actually meet them in England. I met them in their home country, whether Russia or Germany or wherever. And so I'll come to that point a bit later and how we can achieve that. Now, the question is fluency possible to reach? Well, as I've just said, I've met some people who I thought were fluent, so yes, it is possible. But we need to sort of be careful how we aim for this, because it can be a confidence killer. Now, the thing is, we need to sort of be realistic when we learn a language or when we learn anything. Some students come to my classes, some just live and breathe English, and they work really seriously hard. I remember a student, a teenager called Phill, who was I think 15, I think now he's about 17 or even 18, and he would come to me every lesson, and he would have watched some English TV programs, and he was always asking me about vocab. He had a kind of close to a sort of English accent. He knew so many natural expressions because he just lived and breathed it. Whereas some students who have families, commitments, families, jobs, they have other courses that they need to attend. It's going to be difficult to dedicate your time to learning something intensely. So, the question is, if you have a lot of commitments, of course, progress is going to be a lot slower rather than giving your life to it. Hence why when I take students on to say an FCE, CAE, CPE course, I tell them for these months you have to give your life, because it's a very difficult course to complete, and to get an A is very difficult. So if you really want to pass, you've got to just live and breathe it. Sylvia asked, do I need to live in an English-speaking country? Now, for me, that's a very interesting question. The answer is sort of no, I would say. Honestly, no, because yes, if you lived in England, if you, say England for example, or America or wherever, if you surrounded yourself or surrounded yourself with English, you went to work in an English company, was speaking to native speakers every day, you had an English-speaking partner, then you're going to learn pretty quickly. You really are, because you've got no choice. However, it can happen that you can travel to a foreign country and not actually need to learn that much. Because if you're in a community of people, say, if you're Spanish and you're in a community of lots of people from Spain, you're going to rely on each other, and you don't need to sort of confront yourself with a lot of English. So it really sort of depends. If you go to an English-speaking country, you need to throw yourself into the deep end. It's a nice expression. You really need to sort of have a language bath. Because it's very easy to avoid. I've been in Russia for almost 10 years, and I can speak some Russian, I can understand quite a lot, but for 10 years I should be a lot better. But I work with native speakers, I speak to people in English all the time, so, progress is slow. And so, if you were in your home country, say, so you're in Brazil, or you know, people here in Russia. I've met a lot of Russians who speak amazing English, like really high level, like CPE, you know, C2, even, you know, for me CAE C1 level is truly outstanding, and they've never been to an English-speaking country. So yes, you are able to get to an extremely high level. Fluency, yes, I've really met some, but as I said, you need to live and breathe it. You need to watch TV, you need to like read your books, you need to, you know, forget watching films in your own language, just do everything in English. So the more practice you get, then the more likely you are to become fluent. So, I mean, for example, here in Russia, you know, on my social network, the Kontaktia, you know, there are a lot of people that I speak to who are, like, their English is just phenomenal. There's, like, Guzel from Ariol, who, like, you know, helps me a lot with grammar. I mean, her English is just fantastic. There's Olga from Sochi, there's Svetlana from Moldova. I can't name everyone. There are just so many people, and their English is just amazing. And most of these have never even, like, spoken face-to-face very often with a native speaker. So yes, it is possible. It just depends on your commitments and how much of your life you give to this. I watched an online video by Michael Swann. If you don't know who Michael Swann is, he wrote one of my favourite books called Practical English Usage, as well as the Oxford English Grammar Course series. And he's very realistic in his approach to sort of learning a language. And he says we should not aim for fluency, we should aim for what is good enough. Again, based on your commitments and your situation. Because I think that if we aim too high, you know, that is a confidence killer sometimes. And, you know, I find that if your confidence is crushed, you're not going to go back to it. So if we just like aim for the fact that, you know what, I'm going to do my best, I'll do as much as I can, that's fantastic. And also, to be honest, you know, speaking a language is not always about fluency. It really isn't. Of course, we want to get to a high level. Always aim for as realistically as far as possible. But you know, if you've got the character, if you smile, you know, and you can play with the language you already have, there's nothing better than that. There really isn't. I've talked to people who speak elementary English, Korean, and I had some of the best conversations in my life with such people. So, you know, don't think that just by being fluent it's going to make you into a better person. Your English is going to be a lot better, but, you know, your personality is, you know, what's in your heart, etc., etc. So, I hope that helps. If you have any further questions, please leave some comments below. And we can have some really good discussions on this, because it's a very sort of topical subject, and people have their own opinions regarding this. So if that was interesting, please like the video, give a thumbs up, subscribe, you know, and again, my friends, I thank you so much for all your comments, and especially your compliments. It really means a lot to me to hear such things. And so yeah, I'll press on with doing some more videos. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.